Picture this. A man stands before an angry mob, beaten beyond recognition, crowned with thorns that pierce his flesh. Blood drips from wounds that should have killed him hours ago. Yet in his eyes there's something impossible. Not hatred, not fear, love. Pure, unshakable love for the very people demanding his death. This isn't just any story. This is the greatest love story ever told, and it changed the world forever. What if I told you that everything you think you know about love is wrong? That real love isn't the butterflies in your stomach or the romantic comedies you watch. Real love is what happened on a cross 2,000 years ago, and it's about to reshape how you see relationships, forgiveness, and your own worth. Stay with me because by the end of this story, you'll understand why millions of people have found hope in the darkest moments of their lives. Let me take you back to a time when the Roman Empire ruled with an iron fist, when injustice was normal, and when hope seemed like a luxury only the powerful could afford. In this world, a carpenter's son was about to demonstrate love in a way that would echo through eternity. The story begins in a garden called Gethsemane. Jesus knew what was coming. He could have run. He could have called down armies of angels. Instead, he prayed words that reveal the depth of real love. In Luke chapter 22, verse 42, we read his prayer. Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. Here's a man facing the worst kind of death, not for anything he did wrong, but because love demanded it. Think about the last time you had to do something difficult for someone you loved. Maybe you stayed up all night caring for a sick parent. Maybe you sacrificed your dream job to support your family. Maybe you forgave someone who hurt you deeply. That feeling, that choice to put love above comfort, that's just a shadow of what Jesus experienced in that garden. Except his sacrifice wasn't just for family or friends. It was for people who hated him. It was for you and me. The disciples, his closest friends, couldn't even stay awake to pray with him. Peter, James, and John, the ones who had seen miracles, who had walked on water, who had witnessed the impossible, fell asleep when Jesus needed them most. How often do we do the same? How often do the people we love need us to simply be present? And we're too tired, too busy, too distracted. Then comes Judas, 30 pieces of silver, a kiss of betrayal. Matthew chapter 26 tells us how one of Jesus' own disciples led soldiers to arrest him. Imagine the pain. Someone you trusted, someone you poured your life into, sells you out for money. Yet even then, Jesus calls him friend. Even in betrayal, love doesn't turn to hatred. The arrest scene is chaos. Peter draws a sword and cuts off someone's ear. Violence meets violence, just like it does today in our conflicts. But watch what Jesus does in Luke chapter 22, verse 51. He heals the ear of his enemy. In the middle of his own arrest, he stops to show mercy to someone who came to capture him. That's not normal human behavior. That's divine love in action. Here's where the story gets personal for every one of us. Jesus is dragged before the religious leaders, the very people who should have recognized truth when they saw it. They accuse him of blasphemy for claiming to be God's son. But here's what's fascinating. They're not angry because he's lying. They're angry because he's telling the truth, and truth threatens their power. How many times in your own life have you seen this pattern? Someone speaks truth about a situation, and instead of listening, people attack the messenger. Maybe it happened in your family when someone tried to address an addiction. Maybe it happened at work when someone pointed out corruption. Maybe it happened in your church when someone questioned unhealthy leadership. Truth often makes people uncomfortable before it sets them free. The religious trial becomes a mockery of justice. False witnesses give contradictory testimony. The high priest tears his clothes in dramatic outrage. But Jesus, according to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7, remains silent like a lamb before its shearers. His silence isn't weakness, it's strength under control. It's love choosing not to defend itself because the mission is bigger than personal vindication. Then comes the Roman trial before Pontius Pilate. Politics enters the picture. Pilate knows Jesus is innocent. He even says so publicly. But the crowd demands crucifixion, and Pilate chooses political convenience over justice. He washes his hands thinking he can avoid responsibility. Sound familiar? How often do we know the right thing to do but choose the easier path? How often do we wash our hands of responsibility when standing up for truth might cost us something? The scourging begins. Roman soldiers strip Jesus and tie him to a post. The whip they use, called a flagellum, has pieces of bone and metal designed to tear flesh. Medical experts tell us that most people died from this torture alone. But Jesus survives because his mission isn't finished. Every strike of the whip is motivated by love for people who will never even know his name. Every wound is accepted willingly because real love doesn't count the cost. The soldiers mock him, placing a crown of thorns on his head. They kneel in fake worship, spitting on him, striking him with a rod. They dress him in a purple robe to mock his claim to kingship. But here's the irony that should take our breath away. In their mockery, they accidentally declare the truth. He is a king, he is wearing a crown, he is royalty, just not the kind they expected. The walk to Golgotha, the place of the skull, becomes a funeral procession for hope itself. Jesus, weakened by torture, falls under the weight of the cross. Simon of Cyrene is forced to carry it. Even in his weakness, Jesus thinks of others. Luke chapter 23 records him telling the women who mourn for him to weep instead for themselves and their children. Love always thinks beyond its own suffering. 3 crosses stand on that hill. Jesus hangs between 2 criminals, literally taking his place among sinners. This wasn't an accident. Isaiah chapter 53 verse 12 says he was numbered with the transgressors, God's perfect son, surrounded by society's outcasts, because that's where love chooses to be. The first criminal mocks Jesus, demanding to be saved if Jesus is really God's son. But the second criminal sees something different. In Luke chapter 23, he defends Jesus and asks to be remembered when Jesus comes into his kingdom. And here, in the middle of agonizing death, Jesus speaks words that should transform how we think about grace. Today you will be with me in paradise. Think about that moment. A man who lived a life of crime, dying for his sins, experiences complete forgiveness in his final hours. Not because he earned it, not because he had time to make amends, but because he recognized who Jesus was and asked for mercy. That's the kind of grace available to every single one of us. No matter what you've done, no matter how far you think you've fallen, love is still offering paradise. At the foot of the cross stands Mary, Jesus' mother. Imagine watching your son die like this. John chapter 19 shows us Jesus, even in his agony, making sure his mother will be cared for. He tells John to treat Mary as his own mother. Love doesn't stop being responsible, even in suffering. Then darkness covers the land from noon until 3 in the afternoon. This isn't natural. This is supernatural. Creation itself responds to the death of its creator. In that darkness, Jesus cries out words from Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This isn't doubt. This is the moment when the sinless Son of God takes on the sins of humanity and experiences separation from his perfect Father for the first time in eternity. Let that sink in. The one person who never deserved to feel abandoned by God experiences that abandonment so that we never have to. Every moment you've felt alone, every time you've wondered if God cares, remember this moment. God felt your abandonment so deeply that it broke his heart on a cross. Jesus says, I thirst. The creator of every ocean, every river, every drop of rain experiences human thirst. They offer him sour wine on a sponge. Even this small gesture of mercy is motivated by cruelty, designed to prolong his suffering. Yet Jesus receives it because even in death, he accepts the gifts of broken humanity. Then comes the moment that changes everything. Jesus declares, it is finished. Not I am finished. Not I give up, but it is finished. The Greek word is tetelestai, which was written across paid bills in that culture. It means paid in full. Every sin that ever separated humanity from God. Every mistake you've made, every failure you carry, every shame that haunts you, paid in full. The temple curtain, 60 feet high and 4 inches thick, tears from top to bottom. This curtain separated ordinary people from God's presence. Only the high priest could enter once a year. But when Jesus dies, God tears open access to himself, not from bottom to top, which human hands might do, but from top to bottom. God himself removes the barrier. The earth shakes, rocks split, graves open, and the dead are raised. Even the Roman centurion, the soldier overseeing the execution, declares in Matthew chapter 27, Surely he was the Son of God. A pagan soldier recognizes what the religious leaders missed. Truth has a way of breaking through the hardest hearts. Joseph of Arimathea, a secret follower of Jesus, requests the body. With Nicodemus, they prepared Jesus for burial with expensive spices and wrap him in linen. These men, who had been afraid to openly support Jesus during his life, now risk everything to honor him in death. Sometimes love finds its courage in loss. They place his body in a new tomb carved from rock. A massive stone seals the entrance. The religious leaders, still afraid of Jesus even in death, post guards to prevent his disciples from stealing the body. They remember his promise to rise again, even when his own followers seem to have forgotten it. Saturday passes in silence. The disciples hide in fear. Mary weeps. Hope seems buried with Jesus. Have you ever experienced a Saturday like that? When everything you believed in seems dead, when the future looks impossible? That Saturday is part of the story too, because love sometimes asks us to wait in darkness before dawn. But Sunday morning changes everything forever. Matthew chapter 28 tells us that at dawn, there's another earthquake. An angel of the Lord descends and rolls away the stone. His appearance is like lightning, his clothes white as snow. The guards shake with fear and become like dead men. The angel doesn't roll away the stone to let Jesus out. He rolls it away to let the women in. The tomb is already empty. Death couldn't hold love captive. The grave couldn't contain grace. Hell couldn't chain hope. Mary Magdalene arrives first and finds the stone moved. She runs to tell Peter and John, crying that someone has taken Jesus' body. They race to the tomb. John arrives first, but Peter, true to character, pushes past and enters first. They find the burial cloths lying there, but the face cloth folded separately. Jesus wasn't in a hurry. He took time to fold his grave clothes because death no longer had any claim on him. But it's Mary who gets the privilege of the first resurrection appearance. Standing outside the tomb weeping, she encounters someone she thinks is the gardener. Only when he speaks her name does she recognize Jesus. Mary. That's all it takes. Love calls us by name, and suddenly we recognize the voice we thought we'd lost forever. Jesus tells Mary not to cling to him because he hasn't yet ascended to the Father. But he gives her a message for the disciples. I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Notice the change. Before the cross, Jesus spoke of my Father. Now he includes us. The resurrection doesn't just bring Jesus back to life. It brings us into the family of God. That same day, 2 disciples walked to Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem. They're discussing everything that happened, trying to make sense of their shattered hopes. Jesus joins them on the road, but they don't recognize him. Sometimes when we're walking through our darkest valleys, love is right beside us, and we don't even know it. Jesus explains how everything in the scriptures pointed to his death and resurrection. Their hearts burn within them as he speaks, though they still don't recognize who he is. Truth has a way of resonating in our spirits even when our minds haven't caught up. When they reach Emmaus, they invite this stranger to stay for dinner. And in the breaking of bread, their eyes are opened. They recognize Jesus in the act of sharing a meal. Immediately, they run back to Jerusalem to tell the others. They find the disciples gathered together, and everyone is talking at once about how Jesus has appeared to Peter as well. Joy is spreading like wildfire. Death has been defeated, and no one can contain the celebration. Then Jesus appears in the locked room where the disciples are hiding. His first words aren't, "I told you so," or "Why did you abandon me?" His first words are, "Peace be with you." Love doesn't hold grudges. Grace doesn't keep score. Forgiveness comes before explanation. He shows them his hands inside, the scars of his sacrifice. These aren't weaknesses to be hidden. They're trophies to be displayed. The wounds that should have been shameful become the proof of victory. Your scars, your struggles, your broken places, they can become the very evidence of love's power to redeem. But Thomas wasn't there. When the others tell him they've seen Jesus, he refuses to believe unless he can touch the wounds for himself. We often judge Thomas, but maybe his honesty is refreshing. How many of us have secret doubts we're afraid to voice? How many times have we needed to experience God for ourselves rather than just accept someone else's testimony? A week later, Jesus appears again. This time Thomas is present. Jesus doesn't rebuke Thomas for doubting. Instead, he invites Thomas to touch his wounds. "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas responds with the greatest declaration in the gospel, "My Lord and my God." Sometimes doubt leads to the strongest faith, but Jesus also speaks to all of us who will believe without seeing. "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." That's us. We who live 2,000 years later, who have never physically touched his wounds, yet choose to trust in the love displayed on the cross and proven in the resurrection. The disciples returned to fishing, perhaps thinking life should go back to normal. But there is no normal after resurrection. Jesus appears on the beach and provides a miraculous catch of fish. But the real miracle happens around a breakfast fire when Jesus restores Peter. 3 times Peter had denied knowing Jesus during the crucifixion. Now Jesus gives him 3 chances to declare his love. Not once does Jesus mention the denial. Love doesn't keep bringing up past failures. Instead, Jesus focuses on the future. "Feed my sheep." Failure doesn't disqualify us from service. It qualifies us for compassion. The resurrection appearances continue for 40 days. Jesus teaches about the kingdom of God, prepares his disciples for the work ahead, and proves beyond doubt that death has been defeated. Over 500 people witness his resurrection according to Paul's account in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. This isn't a story made up by grieving followers. This is historical fact witnessed by crowds. Finally comes the ascension. Acts chapter 1 describes Jesus being taken up into heaven while the disciples watch. 2 angels appear and promise that Jesus will return the same way he left. The love story isn't over. It's just beginning a new chapter. So what does this mean for you today, right now, in your real life, with real problems and real pain? First, it means your failures aren't final. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to resurrect dead dreams, broken relationships, and lost hope. Romans chapter 8, verse 11 promises that the Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you and will give life to whatever seems dead in your life. Second, it means you're never too far gone for grace. If a thief dying on a cross could find paradise in his final moments, then no sin is too big for God's forgiveness. 1 John chapter 1 verse 9 assures us that if we confess our sins, God is faithful and just to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Third, it means love has already won. Whatever battle you're fighting, whatever enemy seems too strong, the victory has already been secured. You're not fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. The cross defeated sin. The resurrection conquered death. The empty tomb proves that love always has the last word. Fourth, it means your pain has purpose. The scars on Jesus' hands weren't erased by resurrection. They were transformed into symbols of victory. Your struggles, your wounds, your broken places, they can become the very tools God uses to heal others. Finally, it means you're invited into the greatest love story ever told. Not as an observer, but as a participant. The same Jesus who died for you wants to live in you. The same love that conquered death wants to transform your daily life. This isn't just ancient history. This is present reality. The resurrection didn't just prove that Jesus was who he claimed to be. It opened the door for you to become who you were created to be, a carrier of love, a living proof that grace is stronger than guilt, that hope is stronger than despair, and that love really does conquer all. Every sunrise is a reminder of resurrection morning. Every second chance you get is an echo of grace. Every time you choose forgiveness over bitterness, you're participating in the love story that began on a cross and continues in your heart. The greatest love story isn't just about what Jesus did for you, it's about what he wants to do through you. In a world full of hatred, be love. In a culture obsessed with taking, be giving. In a society that cancels mistakes, be grace. In a generation that's forgotten how to forgive, be the reminder that redemption is always possible. Because that's what the cross teaches us. That's what the resurrection proves. Love doesn't just win in the end. Love wins every single day in every single heart that chooses to believe that Friday's pain can become Sunday's victory. The question isn't whether this love story is true. The evidence speaks for itself. The question is whether you'll let it become your story too. Will you accept the love that died for you? Will you embrace the grace that rose for you? Will you join the adventure that began in a tomb and continues wherever hearts are broken and hope is needed? This is your invitation to the greatest love story ever told. Not just to believe it, but to live it. Starting today, starting now. Because love is still writing history, one transformed life at a time.